Well, hi everyone, and welcome to this session of VEX EDR V5 webinars. Today we are going to talk about the competition template. So the reason for what we're calling the competition template is something called the field control system. Whenever teams get to a official VEX Robotics competition, Uh, all of the teams have to connect their robots and actually their remote controls to something called the field control system. And the components of it are pictured here on this slide. The field control system is very important for having fair play during a match. It ensures that all four competition teams start at the same time, that they all stop at the same time, that they all get the same amount of time for their autonomous routine, the same amount for their driver control routine, and also in the event that a robot is malfunctioning or misbehaving, a referee can disable that robot. So whenever you get to a competition, it's not just like being on a practice field. There is a system that is controlling the overall operation of the robot. Now, everything that you've learned about programming, everything that you practice applies here. But in order for your robot to correctly respond to the field control system, in order for it to be enabled at the right times and disabled at the right times, it does have to be programmed using the competition template, which we'll be taking a look at soon. So to get to the competition template inside of VEX Coding Studio, whenever you go to start a new project or open up VEX Coding Studio, you can choose Example Projects. And at the bottom of that list, you can choose Competition. Now, note here that the competition template is currently available in VEX C++ and C++ Pro. You'll be able to find examples of both of those. It is not currently available in ModKit. So ModKit is, at the time of this video at least, does not currently support the field control system. So you will want to stick with VEX C++ or C++ Pro. Once you do choose that, instead of getting a blank file, you will get a file with four major components to it. So I'm going to go over each of those components. The first section is called the pre-autonomous section. The pre-autonomous runs basically, what the name implies. It runs before the autonomous period. This section of code is perfect for doing robot configuration. So if you need to reset encoders, if you need to calibrate a gyro sensor, this is the perfect place to do that. If you need to have your robot in a initial starting position, as long as you stay within the legal size limits of the VEX Robotics competition, you can do that in here. Some advanced programming will also allow you to do fancier things. You could put a routine that gets started in the pre-autonomous section that allows you to choose from multiple different autonomous routines. So say, depending on your starting place on the field or depending on the capabilities of your partner, you want to run a slightly different routine, then you can do things like have a selection on the V5 robot brain that you can choose during this period. So it's before the autonomous, uh, generally used for robot configuration, but you can do some pretty sophisticated and competitively useful things inside of there. Note that this section is absolutely not for the robot driving around scoring points, extending past its legal starting size. So make sure you do still follow all of those rules when putting code inside of this section. And then any code that you want to put inside of it, just make sure that you put in between the opening and closing curly braces that belong to the void pre-auton function here. The next section inside of the template is the autonomous section. This is sometimes called auton. The autonomous portion runs whenever the referees enable it at the beginning of a match. Once all 4 teams are ready, they'll trigger all 4 autonomous routines to go at the same time. That's one for each robot. So this is a perfect place to put any code that you have to sense game objects, to go acquire game objects and score them, or even to strategically place your robot for the beginning of driver control. Or maybe in any given year's challenge, you get points for a parking bonus or things like that. All of those are good things to do during autonomous. The only thing that you don't want to do and can't do is anything with the remote control. So this is the robot fully relying on pre-programmed commands and sensor data in order to navigate the field and do useful things. Again, any code that you want to belong to your autonomous routine, make sure that that goes in between the opening and closing curly braces of the autonomous routine. Now, as with the void pre-auton, this void autonomous, these are just user-defined functions or subroutines. You can feel free to add additional subroutines or functions to the competition template. My only piece of advice there is make sure that you declare them or define them before you try to access them. Okay, so if you have your own custom functions or subroutines, I recommend putting those up above void autonomous if you plan on calling them in void autonomous. The next section is the driver control section. This is sometimes referred to as teleop or user control. This is the section where 1 or 2 students are driving the robot around on the field, trying to score as many points as possible in order to beat the competition. Notice that this section includes a while loop. Inside of this section, typically you will have some kind of loop that keeps it running, that repeats the joystick commands, that repeats the any commands that you have associated with your buttons. So this section is perfect for any code that you've written that involves remote control of the robot. It can be pure remote control. It can combine remote control and sensing data to do operator assist. One common mistake, though, is sometimes teams will have multiple while loops inside of this section, and they'll end up repeating some portions of their code and not other portions of their code. So try to have all of the remote control commands inside of one, what we call parent while loop. Try to put all of those inside of there, and then you should have good success driving the robot around. All right, and then the final section of the competition template is INTMain. So inside of VEX C++, any program that you write is going to have an INTMain. So if you've developed code in another file, chances are that you have an INTMain inside of there. INTMain is where program execution starts for any of your code. Even if you have code up above it, like we do inside of this file, the robot is initially going to start running code inside of here. And so its job is really to kick off the other sections to allow you to be competition compliant, to allow your robot to be responsive to that field control system. And it also serves the purpose of keeping your program running for the duration of the match. It has this infinite loop that will keep it from ending too early. Generally, you should not have to make changes down to this section of the code. If you do make changes, be careful that you don't inadvertently give yourself a competitive disadvantage by delaying whenever your code runs or causing it to not run. You really shouldn't have to affect the code that goes inside of this section. The other thing that I want to note while we are talking about INTMain is if you have developed your autonomous routine inside of a separate file, or if you have developed your remote control routine inside of a separate file, whenever you bring that code into the competition template, you do not want to bring over INTMain. Okay, so INTMain is the primary container, maybe for another file, but whatever autonomous specific code is inside of INTMain, or whatever remote control specific code was inside of INTMain, that's what you bring over. You do not want to have multiple INTMains inside of your program, or you will find that you run into a bunch of compiler issues. There can just be one because that's where the robot looks to start its execution. So do just watch out for that common mistake. All right, well, once you do have all of your code implemented inside of a competition template, then you probably want to be able to do some authentic testing. You can do testing without a competition template. If you just run the program, it will run through your pre-auton, it will run through your autonomous routine, and then it will kick into driver control in sequence. Okay, so you can kind of get a sense for how your robot will behave. But what I really do recommend, if you can, is testing with a VEXnet switch. The VEXnet switch allows you to connect your V5 controller to this switch connected here using the Ethernet cable. And what it will allow you to do is it will allow you to start and stop your program. It will allow you to enable or disable your program, would be the better way of putting it. And it would allow you to start your autonomous routine, stop your autonomous routine, start your driver control period, stop your driver control period. So you can ensure that everything is implemented correctly with the competition template using this device. We mentioned this in the last webinar, but I want to make sure that I mention it here too, since it's relevant. Whenever you do get to a competition, you will have to connect to that field control system. If you are using the competition template and you've done some of your own programming, that's wonderful. One thing that you do have to remember to do with the V5 system is actually start your program. So with the VEX Cortex, with the predecessor, it only stored one program inside of the robot's memory. So whenever you turned the robot on, it just started running your code. You were good to go. With the V5, you can actually store up to 8 programs on the robot's brain. There are 8 program slots in VEX Coding Studio that you can choose where you want the program to live in what order. Well, each of those 8 programs could be a program that contains the competition template. So you could have 8 different routines stored on the robot brain, depending on the conditions of the field, your partner, where you started, those kinds of things. Don't forget, especially if you're used to the Cortex, to choose the correct program and start it. Okay, so whenever you get to the competition field, what you'll want to do, what the recommended order is make sure that your robot and your remote are turned off. Connect your V5 controller to the field control system through the Ethernet cable. Turn on both the V5 controller and the V5 brain and allow them to connect wirelessly. And then start the program or the built-in drive program on the robot brain. Okay, so choose the program and start it. You select it and press run. Okay. Friendly reminder, you can do that from the controller as well, but just make sure that you do start the program, that you're ready to go whenever they enable all of the robots for the autonomous period. All right. Some additional resources. Just a friendly reminder that we are providing VEX EDR V5 training for teachers and coaches. We provide training on site in Pittsburgh during the summers. We provide training online several times throughout the year. And then we are also happy to travel to your location. If you have multiple teachers, multiple staff, coaches that would benefit from some training, we're happy to work with you to do that. We've been all over the world running training. Okay, so keep us in mind for those needs. And then the other really helpful place to go is help.vex.com. I know, going to a website and looking for help isn't always the most appealing, but actually there's some really great articles here, even one that covers the competition template, but troubleshooting any of your hardware, learning how to program inside of the system, answering a lot of questions. There's really a lot of great articles inside of here. All right. Well, thanks again for spending some time with us. If you have any questions, please feel free to send those our way, including any requests for additional topics in the future. In our next webinar, which is about a month from now, we are planning to cover some advanced programming techniques to give you a competitive advantage. So if that's of interest to you, make sure to check us out. All right, thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day.